Shadows of Sanctuary is a 1981 anthology edited by Robert Asprin and Lynn, Abbey, and it is the third Thieves World book. I guess you could start here, but kind of also really no reason not to read the first two, which are Thieves World and then Tales from the Vulgar Unicorn, which I have previously reviewed. The introduction gives us some musings of Hakim once more, the same glee dealing with Sanctuary, right, as it's dangerous, but he stays for the stories. As he finally thinks about One Thumb returning to the Vulgar Unicorn, he had been ensorcelled in the tunnels below the city for nigh a year, as we kind of learn in Tales from the Vulgar Unicorn. But then we get into the actual stories. We have story one, which is Looking for Satan by Vonda N. McIntyre. Four travelers enter the city in the evening. They've been on their journey for months. They marvel at the stink and size of the city, and none have ever been to one before. In fact, a couple of months prior was their first time they've ever visited a town. These characters are named Wes, Quartz, Airy, and Chan, and they're kind of a polyamorous set of friends. They're from the mountains, and Chan is the only man among the group. Looking for an inn, they find the Vulgar Unicorn instead, and they find the customs rather odd. For example, the misogyny of the locals and the revealing clothes of, a tavern wench. We'd even see, they even see through Lathan's disguise, and they are searching, as the title suggests, for Satan, their friend. He has wings, apparently. This kind of seems a critique of our society in some ways, but it is an entertaining tale of a group of outsiders as well. And it's very easy to read and fast-paced and fun. It's a little crude, probably for some, but this is Sanctuary. There is a sweet queerness to the story, too, a la Spear by Nicola Griffith or something like that. The next story is Ishad or Shade or something like that by C.J. Cherry. I've read Gate of Ivor by her, but this was her first appearance in Thieves World, like McIntyre as well. The story begins with young Siesko, a little drunk and plotting revenge against Hans, when he comes across a woman that he quickly sexually assaults. Madhun Vis prevents rape, but he is surprised when the woman says she knows Siesko and basically says she doesn't need any help with him. This woman is a Shade, and Captain Vara makes a cameo as well, and so is Ennis Jarl and Shadowspawn, and the Vulgar Unicorn, of course. The woman in question is our focus, but not a perspective character, actually. She is very beautiful, but with grave eyes and a poise made for shadow. She has the scent of wizardry about her as well. It's kind of a lovey story, with maybe not a surprising ending, but not exactly what you expect either. I was left thinking it had been too long since I'd read a book in this series after finishing this story, and so I was glad to be back in Sanctuary. Story 3 is A Gift in Parting by Robert L. Asprin, who is one of the editors, of course. A young Hort goes to the shore to meet with his father, Panet, and he calls him Old Man, of course. He is a fisherman in Sanctuary, and so gets no notice from really anyone. Hort has also abandoned his father's trade, and now the secret is out that he wants to move to the city. And the city might not even be Sanctuary. There is another conflict for the story, too, that involves the poor fishing of late. It's shorter and enjoyable with nice nods to some other Thieves World stories. I really enjoyed it. It's very interesting and very different from the other Thieves World stories we had read as well. The next story is The Vivisectionist by returning Andrew J. Offit, and story number 4. In Sanctuary called Thieves World is, I think, how it starts or something like that. Someone scaled the wall to the governor's palace. This is told in a very matter-of-fact tone. It also focuses on Shadowspawn. He's not a bad character, but funnily I prefer the other author's interpretations over Offit, even though I believe Offit is the one who created Shadowspawn as a character. The story also involves the Prince Governor Catechithus and Tempest the Hellhound. It gets rather bloody, as you could probably guess from the title as well. Story number 5, we have Diana L. Paxson making her debut as well in Thieves World, The Rhinoceros and the Unicorn. Lalo, I don't know, is getting berated by his wife, Gilla, because his occupation as a painter has them impoverished. While Gilla takes care of the children, including a baby, she also does washing, for better off women, making the money for the family. Lalo really just drinks. And none other than the Vulgar Unicorn, of course. He remembers his beautiful young wife, now gray, and displeased with him. And Captain Vara compares her to a unicorn. He is faced with the task of painting a portrait for Ennis Jarl, whose shape constantly changes, of course, but maybe this painting is not for the wizard himself. Jarvina returns. I think we last saw her in the first Thieves World, and this comes into soul and outside body or beauty and displaying that through art and action. It's also about rekindled love and poverty, and goes to a place rather nice rather than a bad place that I kind of half expected. It was rather heartwarming overall, actually. And then in the sixth story, we have Lynn Abbey, who's a favorite author of mine. It's called Din Azuna Dance, and it starts with a priest with soldiers, buying silk from Cole, the silk seller. This is Mullen Torchholder that actually cameos in the previous story, and he is the chief priest of Vishanka. Azuna is that god's sister, and she is known for her dancing, the dance of the consort, around some mythological event and some ritual that's done, I think annually, if I'm remembering. A commemoration will have a performance of this dance by the Selaha, a northern slave. Hey, Mullen admires her body as she practices. It's a little oily, to say the least. She has been a slave for 10 years, and they think she is somewhat simple and does not understand their language. We learn of her tribe name, like girls being married at age 9, and other such things about her. And she wishes to conceive after the dance to avoid mutilation as well, which is pretty grim. Abbey looking at the mistreatment of women again, which is unsurprising. And I think Abbey does a great job, including her incorporating of Tempest and Catechithus well in this story. And it has an ending I enjoyed as well. The last story is by Janet Morris, A Man and His God, obviously about Tempest, the Hellhound, a long-lived, ever-healing son of Vashanka. His soul is now free, and he wants to rid himself of his other bindings, such as Catechithus. He wants to be a mercenary again, he wants blood and guts, and he also wants to return to his own world. I think that's important for later stories of his. But for now, he sits in camp building fortifications in bad weather. The men, are Rankin and Isilgi of Sanctuary, and the tidings seem ill as war looms, hinting at what is to follow in the story, but maybe the next Thieves World volume as well. Tempest is one of the more intriguing characters, and Morris's ability is, very literary and very well done. The story has the sacred band and homosexuality a la ancient Greece, and the story is largely about Tempest and his relationship to Vashanka. I think the Tempest Beyond trilogy actually takes place between books 5 and 6 of Thieves World as well. But anyways, I didn't actually enjoy that story as much as I enjoyed the previous Janet Morris story in Tales from the Gold Unicorn. But I guess you can't win them all. I would like to see Hort, Lalo, Shade, and Selaha, these newbies from this volume. And in the case of Thieves World, as I was reading this, I was thinking about what label fits it best. And I think the label Sword and Sorcery is what they were going for at times, but it does feel a little bit more like Dungeons & Dragons heroic fantasy rather than something that's explicitly Sword and Sorcery. And that's fine. I like that. I mean, I'm not someone that's going to be strict to some, in some cases, what's really arbitrary, right? I mean, just because it's not strictly Sword and Sorcery all the time doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, even though I'm a big fan of Sword and Sorcery. For example, though, A Shade felt like Sword and Sorcery. The Rhinoceros and Unicorn felt less so, though. Nevertheless, they're all good stories, and they're becoming more interrelated, I feel like, as these volumes go on. That's the first 2 volumes are pretty standalone stories. But also, this first 3, this one as well, so I think you could start anywhere within these first 3, but I think probably, I haven't read the 4th one yet, but I'm going to assume that once I read it, it'd be harder to recommend as a starting point, as they'll probably get all mixed up and jumbled, these storylines, but we'll see. Anyways, Lynn from Lynn's Lyceum, I'm very much looking forward to book 4, which is Storm Season.